Hey everyone, welcome into the Boys and Girls Show. I'm your host, Jane Slater, joined by my co-host, Bobby Belt. And what do you say after this one? Bobby, full disclosure, it was my birthday weekend. I was in Cabo San Lucas for a wedding. Felt a little guilty that I wasn't there for this one. Got back, watched the condensed version on Game Pass. Glad I didn't have to sit through this the way that fans and people in the stands did, because that was 3 hours of rough football.
That's about as bad as I've seen this team play in the last 20 years. I mean, I think relative to how talented they are, how they've been playing, the type of depth they have, how they've responded to adversity throughout this season, I think when you put all that into context, there's no worse game that they've really played. I mean, across the board, just everybody at every position group, the coaching staff, the players, everybody had just about the worst performance that they possibly could have had. And to their credit, they owned it post-game. They said, this is, we got punched in the mouth, and we were not totally prepared for this game.
3 of the worst things about that game that stood out for you, Bobby?
Oh, my gosh. I think that, you got the single coverage looks that you wanted for Dak Prescott, and they still weren't able to, capitalize on them. Even in single coverage, Dak Prescott, up until the last few minutes of the fourth quarter, 8 for 25, just over 100 yards. And then when you narrow it down even more than that, after you get out of the first drive or so, he had a stretch of that game where he was 5 for 20 for 65 yards, a pick. The passer rating was 19. If you just throw it into the ground over and over again, his passer rating would have been 14 points higher. And so, he was not good, and he owned it. That stood out to me. I think the fact that, the Cowboys weren't finishing tackles. It seemed like every run that the Broncos had, they were picking up, minimum 2 to 3 yards extra than they should have, and in a lot of instances were picking up 25, 30 yards more than they should have. So that stands out. And then I think where the game changed, if you want to really drill down and look at a point where the game was affected, it's the Cowboys giving up on 3rd and 8+, where they've been pretty solid on defense this year. There were 5 separate times in the game, 1 on penalty and 4 times on Teddy Bridgewater passes that the Broncos were able to convert 3rd and 8+. And in those instances, on those 5 different drives, it accounted for 27 of their 30 points in the game. And so if you just get off the field and make them kick a field goal on their second drive and get them off the field on the other 4 drives to where they're not scoring points, this is a much closer game, and you're not holding the ball for just 18 minutes. And so I think those are some of the big things that stood out. But really, just about anything you want to point to, you can say, yeah, that was terrible on Sunday.
And this is why I love working with Bobby. For those that are new to our show and aren't familiar with our dynamic, I've always been the news and information girl, and he is your stat savant, a bit of a Rain Man. And I know that you were so excited in the press box working with my colleague Tom Pelissero this week to just unleash all sorts of stats as it related to this winning team. What was the one stat that you didn't get to put out there that you were so excited for?
Well, I was really excited about the last few minutes. My excitement was over the type of stats I was going to be able to put it out to say this is historically one of the worst games they've played. You've never been shut out by an AFC team, had that ready. 5 first downs with a few minutes left, fewest first downs they had in game, had that ready. None of that was there. The big takeaway that I had coming out of this one was, or that I was hoping was going to be a topic of conversation if they won this game, was the fact that they have not played a single snap this year with Tyron Smith, Zach Martin, Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, Michael Gallup, Amari Cooper, and CeeDee Lamb all on the field. Not one snap this year, and yet they've had success. And so I was hoping they were going to be able to continue that narrative a little bit heading into this game against Atlanta. But surely they are going to need to, put this one to bed and kind of, as Colin Powell used to say, get mad and then get over it. And so they need to put this to bed and bounce back against the Falcons this week.
Which brings us to our questions. What do you think? Will Dallas bounce back from this loss? Type Y for yes, type N for no, and go ahead and give us a little share on social media. Also, go ahead and subscribe, youtube.com/Cowboys TV. We talked a little bit there about Dak Prescott. I heard a lot of people talk about, well, he's just shaking off some rust. I firmly disagree with that. Because I look at how little football he played as a result of the ankle, and then he had the shoulder injury in camp, and I thought he looked all world against the Tampa Bay Bucks. And so this one was a little confusing for me. The only thing that I can really point to was my disappointment that they moved Terence Steele, who had done such a nice job over there at right tackle, in favor of Lyle Collins. Now, I get the line of thinking there, right? Don't replace two positions, essentially replace one, move Lyle back to a situation where he feels more comfortable. But we talked to Mike McCarthy leading up to that game, and while he played this one close to the vest, he did point out the nuances of playing on the offensive line and how the vision and the footwork is so different on the left side. So you've already put so much on Terence Steele's plate this year, who's only in, his second season.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you expect the guy that's one of your most important players on the offensive line, the guy that protects Dak's blind side, is going to be aptly prepared in a week to play that position, something that your veteran, Lyle Collins, who played it in college, and granted it's been a while, at least has an idea of how to handle, and that translated with the 10 pressures and the 2 sacks. Your thoughts, Bobby?
Yeah, and Lyle Collins had spoken with Dallas media during the practice week. I believe it was last week. I don't think it was leading up to this game, but they had asked him about getting reps at left guard and being on that left side of the line. And he said that he's actually more comfortable playing the left side. That's his natural spot, and that he feels better there. And so it's a little interesting that you wouldn't just go ahead and trust Lyle with that and let him go out there and play that side like he feels is where he's sharpest. Now, the only thing I can wonder is if eventually you do want Lyle Collins to take back over at right tackle, if you think that he is prepared to go back in there and start for you at right tackle, I could see that with, they want to get a jump start on for when Tyron Smith comes back and is playing left tackle, Lyle Collins has gotten his reps and is ready to go at right. And so that's the only line of thinking that I could think of, is that if they're already thinking we're ready to transition back to Lyle Collins into the starting lineup at right tackle, let's let him get his reps back to use over there while Tyron is out, and just go ahead and live with Steele over there for the next however long it may be.
But one of your most important positions, protecting a quarterback who's had 2 injuries this year that's cost him time in the preseason and that's cost him time during the regular season, I don't know if that's a move I necessarily would have made. And maybe they did what we all did. Well, this is a defense that doesn't feature Von Miller this week, but Justin Simmons sure made you pay early on with that huge hit just coming out of the first quarter when it was 4th and 1. Okay, so let's now talk about the defense. Is Diggs coming back down to earth?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've talked about this. I've always thought it was a little disrespectful to compare him to Jameis Winston's 30 touchdown, 30 interception season, that he's that boomer bust. But I think that, yeah, you're seeing that, he's still a flawed player. We have the stats up there. Targeted 4 times, gave up 3 completions, 64 yards, a touchdown. But then he also had 2 penalties, one that undid a Jordan Lewis interception, and then another that had undone a 3rd down stop. And then, instead of kicking a field goal, the Broncos pick up a touchdown. So Trevon Diggs was definitely a problem on Sunday. But I don't think that's a reason to, pick on him, essentially. I think that, you take his lumps, and he's still growing as a player, and these type of games are going to happen from time to time and to be expected. But I think that, you still should have a lot of confidence in Trevon Diggs. And despite the penalties that he's had the last few weeks, Mike McCarthy spoke in his Monday press conference about we gotta coach that out of him a little bit, some of that. But it's a delicate balance, as McCarthy noted, because you don't want to coach the aggressiveness out of him, and the aggressiveness is part of what makes him such a game changer for you. So I think it's just it goes with the territory of being a young cornerback still growing in this league, and he wasn't going to be a complete lockdown, no bad games for the rest of the season or even for the rest of his career. So these days are going to happen, and I think he's just going through a normal stretch of regressing to the mean a little bit.
Well, and I consider him to be a mentally strong player, the type of player that's probably going to be spending a lot of time on the jugs this week and playing catches. He says he often does after this game. And look, full disclosure, I don't think that this loss is terrible for this team. I mean, we have certainly seen it. I was just covering the Saints game where we saw the Bucs losing in the Mercedes Superdome to Trevor Siemian and a team that didn't have Michael Thomas. There's not really a perfect team this season, and I do think that it helps this team. We kept talking about don't take the cheese, spending time focusing on that. That the only knock really on this team was the penalties heading into this game, that we're really focusing on just the little things. But I think, as people started saying the S word in the building, at NFL Network, and I was talking them off the ledge on that, I think that this is a good gut check for this team, and I tend to think that this was just one of those games.
Yeah.
And I think you and I had joked a little bit about this, Bobby. It's such the Cowboys way to go and do the improbable. Win on the road against the Minnesota Vikings, against that crowd, that noise, the backup quarterback, and have the night that they did, and then go ahead and lay an egg against the Broncos, who a lot of people overlooked Teddy Bridgewater, but having covered the Saints, my other team, I will tell you, Bridgewater's not a guy you want to necessarily overlook. He did a really good job when he was filling in there in New Orleans. And then I think they even talked about it, how disrespectful they considered it when Mike McCarthy and this team went for it on fourth down early on. They went in the huddle and used that as motivation.
Oh, and we were obviously post-game at the network. We were going to the Broncos locker, and there was it was pretty reserved for the most part, but man, there were some veterans walking by, chirping a little bit. We had one Broncos player saying, "How about them Broncos? Why don't y'all print that?" Another player came by and was saying, y'all didn't expect this. Y'all said we stood no chance, and he said, "Guess what? We don't give a blank what you guys say." And there was a lot of chatter, and there were a lot of Broncos fans in attendance. Felt a little bit like a home game for them in that second half. But I think that you're right mostly. I think that you just write this off to they laid an egg. It was flat. It's a little concerning when it's across the board like that, which makes you think it was maybe a team-wide underestimation, and we're going to show up and we're going to play and we're going to do well. The only
those
thing
12 o'clock games are tough too for these teams. If you talk to a lot of these guys, they will tell you those noon kicks, for whatever reason, are rough for them as opposed to the 3:25.
For a lot of players, yeah. For Dak specifically, I had noticed this during the week that was stunning to me. Dak actually has played great in noon games for his career. 44 touchdowns, 5 interceptions heading into this game in noon games. But, I think the only question you go is in terms of the blueprint. I don't know if schematically the Broncos laid out a blueprint as much as it was just a stylistic blueprint of get physical with this football team and punch them in the mouth a little bit. And I think that'll be what the Cowboys have to respond to. Prove their toughness and come out this week against Atlanta and show they're not just a finesse football team.
Well, listen, don't miss out. Obviously, we've got a lot of things to say about this team and particularly this game and then the look ahead. Subscribe for more free videos from the Boys and Girl show right there at that link below. We've talked about a lot of the negatives in this game. Bobby, let's leave our viewers with some signs of hope.
Yeah,
why should we still be optimistic about this team as they sit 6-2?
And look, I think Dak Prescott had the best line about this. I believe it was after they had won a couple of the games to start the season, which was, he said, when we lose, the sky is falling and everybody's dunking on us, and when we win a few games, then everybody's trying to gas us up and get us feeling like you're the best in the world. And Dak had said, look, when you run into these situations, it's important to remain level and to say it is never as bad as everyone's saying it is when you lose, and it's never as good as everyone's saying it is when you win. And so as rough as a game as it was, I think that's what you have to view it as. It's just a game. And there's still a lot of positivity. Micah Parsons played fantastic. I think Leighton Vander Esch, kind of bounced back, had one of his more solid games and really, kind of locked in the second half and showed a lot of emotion on the sideline. And was one of the guys in postgame who was talking about we needed this. And so I think the positives you take from this are Micah Parsons' performance, Michael Gallup's on his way back. That's only going to improve your passing attack. And I think, just the way that they responded postgame, I think that's a reason for optimism, that they understood what happened and they feel like, this was a wake-up call for them.
Well, and I'm going to add one last one. They didn't get Dak killed because it certainly felt like that. I still have questions as to why you left him in there to score 2 touchdowns in garbage time late in the fourth.
And to run a quarterback draw on a meaningless 2-point conversion with a bad calf.
So across the board, coaching, players, I think everyone's going back to the drawing board this week. We will go back to the drawing board and preview this Falcons-Cowboys game coming up. But we appreciate you tuning into this one. We'll check us out later in the week, and we'll start looking ahead. We're not going to spend too much time on the tape. I doubt the Cowboys do either. So let's look ahead. Subscribe, youtube.com/Cowboys TV. Bobby, always appreciate doing some Cowboys with you.
Absolutely. Happy to be here, and on to Atlanta.